Good afternoon, sirs and ma'ams. Welcome to this bi-weekly presentation of the Center of Excellence in Migration and Global Studies. I sincerely welcome you all, and I'm hoping that more people will come on as we start, because we want to make it at the dot of time. Today, we are going to have an exciting presentation. But before we go on, I want to say I welcome everybody and send special greetings from the Vice Chancellor of the National Open University of Nigeria, Professor Olufemi Peters. I also want to welcome specially our presenter for today. But before I go ahead to introduce him, let me just tell you briefly in a few sentences about our center, Center of Excellence in Migration and Global Studies. It is a center that was started in February 2020 with a seed fund from TED Fund, and it is about migration and global studies in Nigeria and globally, generally. And this center was started by our immediate past Vice Chancellor of the National Open University of Nigeria, Professor Abdallah Uba Adamu, who is always with us, and even though he's no more the Vice Chancellor, but we always enjoy his mentorship and goodwill for this center. And our present Vice Chancellor also really holds this center to a high esteem and always very supportive towards all activities in this center. So this center is basically having the mandate to provide leverage for field-based and solution-driven research, to serve as agent of national policy for migration and global studies, to seek grants for academic activities and outreach for sustainability, to publish and sustain peer-reviewed academic journal and monograph series, to collaborate with stakeholders in the field of migration, global studies, and policymakers, to organize occasional seminars, conferences, and public lectures in migration and global studies. I want to let you know that we have our journal in this center, which is called the International Journal for Migration and Global Studies. And we have produced 3 issues from 2 volumes. The volume 1, we had 2 issues, and that was last year, 2021. And this year, we've had the first issue of the volume 2, and the second one is going to come out soon in the month of November. And of course, our seminars, we have them every fortnight. And in the nearest future, we are also planning to have a conference, which will be sometimes next year. We'll be announcing that to you. So the center is, by His grace, waxing strong and strong every time. And we have our people who are very supportive and mentoring us. People like our immediate past director, the pioneer director of this center, Professor Akim Tijani, always with us and always encouraging us. And of course, we have our emeritus professor here, who is also a father to us in this center and always making sure we are doing it right. And many more that are not listed here now for want of time. So on that note, I now want to introduce the presenter for today. On our chat box, you can see the link to our website and our journal site. It will be on the chat box shortly. Today's presenter is a special, so this presentation is a special one because we are not going to have our normal academic structure. We have someone who is not into academics, but he wants to share with us his migration experiences. And I told you the last time that we were going to have something quite different from the routine we used to have. But I'm also very pleased to tell you that the person in question also decided to produce PowerPoints, power slides for us, so that even though it's not in academics, it's abreast of what he should do. And the person today is called Mr. Trevor Ward, who is a specialist consultant in the hospitality, leisure, and real estate industries. He is managing director of the Lagos-based hospitality group and chairman of Hotel Partners Africa. He started his consultancy career in 1983 having previously completed a university degree in hotel management at the University of Surrey and worked in hotel management positions in the UK. From the late 1980s, he has specialized in the provision of advisory services to clients in developing countries, and since 2003 has been based in Nigeria. So you can see that he's been here for almost 20 years, advising clients there and throughout Africa. His industry experience spans over 45 years and includes advising clients on hotel, tourism, and leisure development in over 90 countries across the globe and in 40 in Africa. With a special focus on sub-Saharan Africa, he works with many of the international hotel groups seeking a presence there and with financial institutions, investors, and entrepreneurs across the continent. He is regarded as one of the foremost experts on the hotel industry in sub-Saharan Africa and is engaged primarily in development consultancy, ranging from investment appraisals to operator selection, asset management, valuations, and agency. In addition to his advisory work, Trevor is a fellow of the Institute of Hospitality and a member of the International Society of Hospitality Consultants. He is a founder and trustee of the Hotel Managers and Owners Association of Lagos and chairman of the advisory board of Wavecrest College of Hospitalities in Lagos. Also, he is a regular speaker at industry conferences and writes in various professional and African-focused journals, including African Investor and BT Africa. In 2018, he was awarded the inaugural Creating Impact Award for his outstanding contribution to Africa at Bench Events, African Hospitality Investment Forum. In 2019, he was recognized at the Pine Hospitality Awards as Icon of the Year, and in 2021 as one of the top 30 tourism and hospitality influencers in Africa. On this note, I am very happy and excited to present to you Mr. Trevor Ward, who is going to share his experience with us and his catching title from Los Angeles to Lagos to Istanbul. So here we have Mr. Trevor Ward. Over to you, sir. You can share your screen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gloria, for the flattering introduction. It's not often one hears it all in such a short amount of time when you think that that's kind of a 45-year span that covers. So thank you for giving me this opportunity to present on migration. Of course, when I was first asked, I thought, why me? What do I know about migration? Because when somebody like me, who's not involved in the academic world or anything, one thinks of migration as rural movement, mass movement from rural to cities, as is happening throughout Africa, throughout China, and one looks at that in terms of the economic and social impact of that particular migration. One thinks of illegal migration, one thinks of economic and forced migration, typically of numbers of people. Now, I'm going to talk about one person's migration, which I've never thought of it before, but of course I am a migrant. I suppose I'm an immigrant, although that word definitely has some negative connotations. But I'm an immigrant, I'm a migrant. I'm not academic. I'm not particularly learned either. I'm going to give you a personal journey, a personal recount of a migrant. So I All right, so A Tale of One Man, Three Cities, LON-LOS-IST. Well, Gloria's just given the game away of what they stand for. But as a traveler, and I've traveled to and worked in 90 cities around the, well, 90 countries around the world and 40 countries in Africa. I do tend to write in shorthand when I refer to cities. So these are the airport codes for London, Lagos, and Istanbul. And why I'm talking about those three cities will become apparent as I go through this deck. They're three cities in which I've lived, two of which I've lived as a migrant. But before I get into my own personal experience, so I'm going to digress into what I call man's life stages. I'm sorry, it's always man, but it does apply to man as a species. So ladies, you're in there as well. Man's life stages. I may well call it a digression, but it actually is relevant to the migration of an expatriate. So those are the three cities we're talking about. Okay, London, Lagos, Istanbul. And my first exhibit is a painting which, unbelievably, is 500 years old, this painting. It's by an artist called Titian, somewhere in Italy. Of course, Italy didn't exist in those days. One of the cities, I think Milan, actually, in those days. And Titian was displaying the three ages of man. On the right-hand side, this is how he and others at that time in the 16th century saw the ages of man. So on the right-hand side, you've got two sleeping babies, infants, and apparently that's Cupid hovering over the top of the two babies. Cupid, the god of love. And then on the left-hand side, you've got grown-up man, grown-up woman. They're lovers about to embrace love again. So we have this artist who's seeing life through love. And then if you can see it at the background to the bottom left of that ruined tree, there's an old man looking at a skull. I suppose we'll never understand completely what was in Titian's mind when he did this, but notice how distant the old man is, how small compared to the two lovers on the left-hand side. So that was the priority, if you like. Love as infant, love as adults, and then the old man in the distant. So carrying on with this ages of man, my next stop is Shakespeare. And Shakespeare talked about the 7 ages of man. And this was in his play As You Like It. And it was a soliloquy, rather maudlin soliloquy by one of the participants in that story, where he talks about, again, all male characters: infancy, schoolboy, teenager, young man, middle-aged, old age, dotage, and death. So we've got rather more than just Titian's 3 ages of man. So infancy, I noticed that in this portrayal, which I guess is from a church, they're faceless, no faces. The schoolboy is also faceless. And then we have the teenager and the young man, much more, you can see their faces. And then middle age is getting a little bit vague, old age equally vague, and then dotage and death is faceless. I wonder if that has any meaning. Anyway, so we have this description, and it comes in the context of the speech, which starts, all the world's a stage. And there we have the 7 ages of man, which are perhaps more understandable in modern times. the infant, the schoolboy, the teenager, young man, middle-aged old man, and older man, we'll call him. At least these guys have got faces, but I've no idea why they have no shoes. I really do prefer Shakespeare as a rendition than this modern one. Now we go back to the three ages of man, and oopsie daisy, the three stages of man. And this is what a financial advisor used to tell us, certainly me, when I was in education. These are the three stages that you will go through in your future life. The financial advisor's rather simplistic view of one's future, okay? So maybe 45, 50 years ago, I was told that I would go through education, then I would work, and then I would retire. And retirement in those days was thought of as age 65, because in those days that was the UK government's age. It's changed. I have to go to 67 before I get my pension, and other people, I'm sure, are older than that. So I started out on this, yes, education, actually till age 22. I'll come to that in a minute. And then I was going to go and work in the hotel industry as a hotel manager. But it didn't work out like that. And I can assure you, it's not like this anymore. And the article I took this image from says the death of the three stages of man. Now, I'm going to just, I have no financial interest in this. It's a book that you might find of interest when you're investigating this ages of man, called The 100-Year Life, Living and Working in an Age of Longevity. And it's based on the premise that we're getting older. We as a race are getting older. That three-stage life no longer exists. When I was born, 1958, there's some statistics that say in the UK, I was born in 1958 in the UK, I had a 12.5% chance, 1 in 8 chance of living to 100. A baby born in the UK today is said to have a 50% chance of living to 100 years old. That's a massive change. In 1910, it was below 1%. You ain't gonna do it. Okay, today they say 50%. Now there's lots of different statistics and sources, but that's just a handy soundbite that babies born today in the Western world, in the UK, have half a chance of getting there, getting to 100, okay? Japan, here's an interesting one. When you get to 100 years of age in Japan, the government gives you a silver sake dish. Not sure what you do with a silver sake dish, but they give you one anyway. In 1963, the government gave out 153 sake dishes to people who got to 100 in that year. In 2014, the latest data available, the government gave out almost 30,000 sake dishes to people who got to the age of 100 in 2014. And there's no doubt that that number has increased. So let's move on. If the 7 stages was Shakespearean fantasy and the 3 ages is dead, let's have a look at the next division, which says 5, 7, 9 stages of man. And I'll explain why 5, 7, 9 in a bit. So education, same. All out work, retraining, second career, and then age 70 plus part-time work and retirement. Now, these ages, take them with a little pinch of salt. They won't apply to everybody. But the whole idea here is that you're going to have to really work very hard here to be able to retrain, and then work very hard again in order to be able to retire. Okay. Now, planning for change. I actually prefer planning for reinvention of self. The other word that one can use here is transformation, which after I wrote this slide, I thought that would have been a better word, but reinvention, transformation. Now, this kind of, if you're sitting here, or even here in this age range, it was Winston Churchill who said, it's always wise to look ahead, but difficult to look further than you can see. It's always wise to look ahead, but difficult to look further than you can see. And that really has applied to my life stage of Shakespeare's Seven Ages. I as a teenager, I couldn't see beyond that second stage, which was working. Impossible as a teenager or a young 20s to say, what am I going to do when I retire? Impossible. Just, one assumed that that would be 40, 50 years in the future. So in this model you're looking at, I couldn't look beyond that first career stage, which for me was 23 to 25 years old. And I will come back to why those ages have booked there, which are my ages as I did it. Note at the top there, reinvention, 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 transformation, transformation, partly by migration. Imagine anybody listening who's maybe my age or older. Go back to the skills you learned at school or university, particularly if they relate to any technology. Are those skills relevant anymore? I remember how exciting it was at school when my mother bought me a calculator. And this chunky thing cost a fortune because it had a square root key. That was quite special now. I just bought a calculator for my daughter for half the price, and it's a Scientific Hewlett-Packard all-whiz calculator, which might as well be called a computer. Give me or my teacher that back 50 years ago, they wouldn't have known what to do with it. So skills change. And if you're going to be working, let's say from age 20 to age 75, that's 55 years of work, which will probably be necessary in order to retire comfortably, to save up in your pension or whatever. So you'll have to keep reinventing. You'll have to keep retraining, which is why so many, blue-collar workers tend to fall behind because they don't get new skills. They're doing the same thing day in, day out. And then they find technology has actually swept them away. But that's another. So looking at this slide, this has been my 5 stages so far. In the first one, I had a 10-year horizon. I was going to where it says ages 23, 25. I went into hotel management, and I was going to be the youngest general manager of London Savoy Hotel within 10 years. Well, you can see that I actually lasted only 2 years, and I reinvented myself because I decided to do so. I won't go into all the details of that. And then I had a second career, which started at the age of 25, is when I became a consultant. And I'm based in London at the moment, 25 years old. And I thought I'll do this for 10 years. And in fact, next year I celebrate 40 years as a consultant, doing pretty much the same as when I started when I was age 25 years old. I'm now in the fourth one there, ages 45 to 70. Yes, I'm 63 years old. I don't know when stage 4 is going to end, and I certainly don't know when stage 5 is going to, because I can't look forward too far. None of us can. So let's get to migration, and you'll see why this relates to the whole subject of migration as I go forward. I am an expatriate. That means a foreigner living and normally working. It's an expatriate worker, typically, living and working away from my place of birth or my normal residence. Okay. So the expatriate worker on the left-hand side, there are reasons for becoming an expatriate, a migrant. Company posting. You are going to head up our office in Islamabad. No choice. Company posting. You have a choice. You can stay here, or would you like to go and head up our new office in Islamabad? Sometimes men and women follow their spouse who have been posted overseas. You quite often find that in the diplomatic service. And then opportunity tends to be voluntary, doesn't it? Why would somebody become an expatriate? In the old days, definitely, it was all about money, because expatriates earned a lot of money. That's not the case anymore, I can assure you. I mean, obviously there are exceptions, but it's not the gravy train of working in the Middle East anymore. So money is a motivation. Career defense. If you don't go, you're either out or you're going to stagnate back in the office at home. If you go, that'll be a really good thing. And when you come back home, you'll become a VP. Curiosity. I wonder what it would be like to go and work somewhere else. And then, of course, there's the family move. Where did I fit in this list? Opportunity, money, curiosity. You could mark down as mine. Now, the time horizons is important here. If you're posted overseas by a company or a government in a diplomatic post, it's time limited. You'll do your 3 years. You'll maybe have another year after that or another year after that, but it tends to be time limited. Opposed to particularly where it's the opportunistic move, tends to be open-ended. And that alludes back to what I was saying about, I don't know when it will finish and I will transform into another stage. So back to my 7 ages of man. I can't give it up, can I? At infancy, my time horizon was the next meal. As a schoolboy, what did I look forward to? The end of term, holidays, birthdays, Christmas. As a teenager, I don't no real idea. Who cares? Whatever. Me, an expatriate. As a young man, in 10 years, I'll be a general manager of the Savoy Hotel in London. Me, an expatriate. And as a slightly older young man, I mentioned 10 years a consultant. Me, an expatriate. No. So at middle age, I moved to Lagos and became an expatriate. I migrated with no time horizon. And all of a sudden, I'm an expatriate. At old age, is that me? I'm not sure. 63, somebody can decide for me whether I'm middle-aged or old age. I don't have any real idea except that I am now permanently an expatriate, a migrant. So in 2003, I moved from London to Lagos. Why did I do it? Well, I put my motivations under three headings there. Personal. I just felt the need at age 45-ish for transformation, reinvention. I was bored of London. I could see an exciting challenge. I have to explain, and it comes under professional. I'd been frequently traveling between London and Lagos anyway, from my London base and returning to my London base. So it wasn't, Lagos, let's go to Lagos. Exciting challenge, office life crisis, home life crisis. I don't need to go into detail of that. I could be back in charge of my own business if I moved to Lagos. Professional motivations. I was doing a lot of work in Nigeria and elsewhere in Africa. I could see the opportunity. I could smell the opportunity. I already had an existing client base in Nigeria and elsewhere in Africa. And I thought, I reckon I could do new things. Not just for consultancy, I could do new things if I was based in Lagos with nobody but me to answer to. So the economic, new income streams, money, business ownership in a growing nation continent. I think I was 8 years ahead of The Economist. Some of you will remember 2011, The Economist front page was Africa Rising. So I moved 8 years ahead of The Economist realizing that. So it was totally my decision to be a migrant, to become an expatriate. I'd set up a satellite office of the London company that I was part of. I would spend 3 weeks in Lagos and 1 week with the company in London. Divided loyalties, split loyalties. It's just too much, the traveling. And I didn't know where I was. So I severed corporate ties with the UK. I quit that company. It's a shame because I had still had a salary. My personal ties were partially severed. I won't go into detail in that, but one can imagine. And I devoted 100% focus on Africa. And I undertook frantic local and content-wide networking. I had to move from this. Sorry, you can't see my mouse moving, can you? I had to move from the left hand, a small fish in a very big pond, to the right-hand side to become a big fish in a big pond, which I had been in my previous life in London before migrating. But I didn't only have to go from top left to top right. First of all, I had to move from being a complete fish out of water to get to being in the water before I could get bigger in that water. I thought it was going to be so easy. But knowing the business in a location and having a professional network clients in a location that one migrates to is really very different to knowing how to live there. And you have to learn that, and you have to learn that very quickly, how to live in Lagos. Because so many things are different. And this is probably going to be anywhere moving. I can imagine moving from London to New York, London to Paris. One would face a learning curve of how to live in a place. You can read all about other people's experience, and goodness, there are a lot of books written by people about moving home. But it's never, ever enough. You have to get your own boots dirty. And you have to have people to guide you. I sometimes encounter people who have moved, who are quite lonely and depressed, because it's easier for them to stay inside their apartment and shut the door than go out and face difficulties and have to overcome them. And those guys don't tend to last terribly long as migrant expatriates. So it's essential to have, as a migrant, as an expat, to have that personal and professional network to succeed. It's interesting that expatriates tend to flock together, that one gets in touch with one's own, the embassy or the High Commission, and as a Brit, one gets to know Brits, and there's the British business group that we others get involved in, and that's both a social and personal network, which provides that kind of psychological security in a new place, and sometimes physical security in terms of looking out for one another in case of problems. That we used to have a warden scheme. I had a list of people to call when, for example, if there was ever, God forbid, a coup, that I had a list of people I would call and tell them what to do, okay, if anything happened. So that's a psychological safety, personal version. So what happened when I moved to Lagos in 2003? Yep, I moved from left to right. As I said, I wasn't completely green. It wasn't. Oh gosh, I've flown to Lagos now. I've never been here before. What I had been there many times, so I wasn't as much of a fresh fish as some new migrants are. Probably many new migrants, in fact, new expats are. I quite quickly reinvented myself, transformed myself to be an expat. As I said, suddenly it was, before I moved, I didn't think of myself as becoming a migrant or an expat. It was only after I thought, oh, I'm one of those expatriates now. Okay. So through my network, but also my belief that I could do it, my personal motivation to migrate were driving me along, my belief that I could do it. After 13 years, so 2003 to 2016, during which I built up a very successful business throughout the whole of Africa. I was traveling a great deal, as I said before. I've always considered myself as a traveler. I visited 40 different African countries out of 54, some frequently, many, many times over from my Lagos base. I became your brother-in-law. I married your sister. My wife is from Edo State. We've been married for 15 years now. But I wanted to leave Lagos. Why? Again, this need for transformation, reinvention. And I have to say, and I know a lot of you will understand this, it was the quality of life in Lagos, or if you want, the reducing quality of life in Lagos, that my wife and I, decided that we were going to have an exciting new challenge, nothing to do with our professional life. And my wife has businesses in Lagos, like I do still, and no economic reason to moving. It was more, let's do it. It'll be exciting. So we moved from Lagos to Istanbul. Why Istanbul? Long story. Let me just tell you, it's a wonderful place to live. So here's the plan. I would retain my office, and I have a house, own a house in Lagos. I would spend 3 to 4 weeks in Lagos and 3 to 4 weeks in Istanbul, at home in Istanbul. Well, that worked. We were fish out of water, and to some extent we still are. We migrated to a country. I'll tell you about the challenges in a minute. But this was a personal decision. We volunteered for it. Okay, I volunteered for that migration from London to Lagos. But as I said before, there were professional economic reasons for that migration. This one was pure personal motivation. And again, it wasn't we weren't green. I had been visiting, at that time, I'd been visiting Turkey from London and from Lagos for 30 years. We had already practiced living in Istanbul by visiting and staying in apartments many times over the years. So we thought, yeah, okay, we will be able to cope with this. Well, it worked until March 2020, when COVID-19 caused governments to lock down. Globally, the world locked down. Actually, something just occurs to me. I read today that something like 80 countries in the world still have restrictions on travel due to COVID-19. I wasn't aware it was quite so many. Anyway, the world locked down, and I was tied to home with homeschooling of my then 8-year-old daughter. This is 2.5 years ago. And we all reinvented ourselves again. I'm sure all of you are kind of nodding at this one. We had to. This was entirely enforced by law to reinvent ourselves because we had to stay at home. We worked from home, those of us that could. Pity those poor guys who couldn't, because the nature of their work meant they couldn't work from home. They were stuck from home for the first time ever. We discovered Zoom, we discovered Teams, we discovered home deliveries, and many of those habits have actually stuck. Here we are today on a Zoom call. I wonder how we would have organized this call 5 years ago, whether it would have been possible to organize something. And in 2022, that suits me fine. From my first 6 months as a traveler and as having made one of my homes in Lagos, I was so frustrated by the day in, day out routine. I found it incredibly difficult because I wasn't moving around. I wasn't in Lagos. But after 6 months, I'm pleased to say that I relaxed, I chilled, and I thought, I like this new life. So now I'm a migrant, I'm a foreigner, I'm an expatriate living in Turkey with a house and office in Lagos, which I visit now every 2 to 3 months when the need arises, because more and more my client base accepts that I'm not in Lagos. Are you in Lagos, Trevor? No. Oh, okay, never mind. We'll speak on the phone, or we'll do it. It's not, oh my goodness, when are you going to be here? Because we can't do anything unless we do it face to face. It just doesn't happen anymore. Which is an extraordinary change when you think about it from 5 years ago. Let me know when you're in town because I want to meet. Now it's when can we have a Zoom call? So we've all transformed, we've all reinvented ourselves. So the expatriate life generally, these I would say are, most of them are my own personal experience. Challenges, immigration, dealing with immigration. Unfortunately, I've not had the benefit of dealing with a good immigration system in either Nigeria or here in Turkey. It's a serious stress causer, getting your residence permit. Here in Turkey, every time I apply, they think of a new piece of paper to ask me for when I go for my appointment, having given all my documents in. It is not easy. You have to deal with new legal and tax systems. I've spent a lot of money and an awful lot of time consulting tax lawyers about pensions and trusts and stuff here. Just generally the way things are done. The language for certainly for us moving to Turkey, and you can imagine other cross-border migration, the language can be a real problem. You can learn the basic language, but the nuances and that you miss out completely. Making jokes, Anglophone way of making jokes or sarcasm or irony does not go down very well in America. They don't get it. Least of all trying to do it, translating word for word a humorous comment from English into another language. It rarely works. Lack of local knowledge, safety, fish out of water generally. But for every expat I know, and I've been had experience with, the benefits are those that are some of those that I expressed before. But I've added that unique experiences, personal and professional networks, which last you forever. So I name a country in Africa, and I can probably, of the ones I've been to, I can probably say, oh yeah, I know such and such. He's a really good guy. Give him a call. Learning. Now, this is hugely important to me. That day in, day out, I want to be learning, and I am learning. I've read so many books about Nigeria. I've read so many books about Turkey. And then I just to fill in the list, I wrote down the weather. For some of us, moving from A to B is moving to nicer weather. So where am I now? Well, I'm not sure. Try to repeat Churchill. It's good to look forward, but you can't look forward further than you can see. I don't know what my future is going to bring. I sit in number 4 there, 45 to 70. So I know where I am. Will I migrate again? I doubt it very much. Never say never, but I don't believe so. Am I going to reinvent my career? It's unlikely. I'm 63 years old. Were I giving this at 30 years old, I'd say, yeah, I'm thinking I might become a, okay. For me, will there be a 6 and 7 slotted into this? I doubt it. Again, I think that time is past for me. But what is stage 5 going to bring me? When I'm, let's say, 70 plus. Am I going to live to 100? I don't know. He knows. I don't know. Will I do a 3rd career? Maybe. It's not impossible. Will I carry on learning? Yes. Will I learn to have a 3rd career? Maybe. Who knows? And I don't know when my time horizon is. It's completely open-ended. I used to say I'd retire at 60. That's gone. Sometimes I say to myself, at 65, I'll make a decision. Well, 65 is next year, end of next year. I don't know. So I've reinvented myself. I've transformed myself by change of career quite early on. Migration twice. But today's millennials, they're going to need much more than one change or even 2 changes in career in what could be a 100-year life. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ward, for this poetic presentation. Because for me, I thought I was listening to kind of poetry, and it was very exciting to me because I remember I did some literature in school, and this brought it down my memory that, oh, it's like I'm in a literature class one more time. So, but I enjoyed every bit of it. Thank you so much. And I know that the people are ready to inquire some things, and I would just want to say, the other phase which you have answered, I wanted to ask, how easy is it to take a third career at 70? But I got that from your last sentence that you are not sure whether you will take another career. So which means it may not be quite easy if one is 70 to take a career. That's my own assumption from what you said last to what I saw in the outline there of a third career at 70. So, and then I wanted to say, well, welcome, you are our in-law, and you are my in-law in particular. So,
I mean, Gloria,
from Edo State, so you are Nigerian.
Well, in 2010, one had a 0.17% chance of living to 100, which is near to zero, okay? If you look at life expectancy, I don't have the figures, but probably your life expectancy in 1910 was probably about 50, 60 years. Now that tends to push out 1 month every 2 years or something like that. I should have mugged up on this. And our life expectancy is increasing and increasing because of better healthcare. Greater wealth, better healthcare. Therefore, age 70, for me, it's 6 years' time. I'm not going to suddenly move from Shakespeare's 5, in which I think I'm at the moment, to his number 7 in my dotage and on my deathbed at 70. It's not going to happen. I would imagine that at age 70, I will be pretty similar to what I am now. So to have a third career is biologically quite possible. Unfortunately, for many people, it will be essential to continue working because they won't be able to afford to retire at that age. Their pensions just won't be enough. And of course, inflation is making things worse at the moment. They won't be able to afford to retire unless they go into poverty, which of course is nobody's ambition.
Okay, so thank you so much for that response. Let me now call on Emeritus Professor Sogolo, who put up his hand first to make his contributions, and followed by Professor Akim Tijani. Thank you so much. Prof.
First, I want to congratulate Trevor Ward for this beginning that is not an academic presentation, and it is not, but it is an exciting, to start by simply saying first that I don't know whether I will grant or simply as a traveler, but there's one thing that seems that he is an adventurer. And what he has told us is like, if I say the travelogue of Trevor Watt, because he's telling us his experience. He is in the hospitality business. He's moving in. This London, Lagos, Istanbul, and so it was towards the end when he revealed indeed that he is married to, so it's my in-law. I'm from Jeddah, and your wife is from Edo State, so you are my in-law. It was when you revealed that I said, okay, maybe that has been moving this man. But for sure, Trevor is an adventurer. And he has the luxury of moving from one place to the other. If you're really a thorough businessman and you were moved by business, you might not have time to reflect on much of what factor will be profit. And you probably would move to more places than the 3 where you are now. You was career. That is when you become 70 plus. You call it, so I'm already on that lab. That's your last lab, which you don't know about. Because hospitality will remain your business. And then, of course, you go on enjoying yourself, maybe move to, but let me just tell you, it is an exciting story and I've enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Me as an adventurer before, certainly a traveler. Adventurer, well, I guess I don't object to the adjective, or sorry, the noun. But they were long-term adventures. Yeah, it wasn't 5, 6, 7, 8 a year. It was a long-term adventure, if you like. But thank you.
Lifetime adventure, a lifetime. I mean, proclivity to adventure. Because every component of your, so that's what I really mean.
Okay.
Yes.
So now let's hear Professor Tijani's comments.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Ward. Mine is a comment, is not a question. And I also posted on the chat, and I'm going to read it. I should note that the trajectory of man and woman is in itself migratory. Mr. Ward's presentation is enriching, refreshing, and contextualizing multidimensional nature of global migration, upon which CEMGS is predicated. The Shakespearean infusion with personal experiences will forever be a good learning moment. And I say thank you, Mr. Ward, for sharing, sir. If we take a step back and look into our archives and then put together 3 presentations that I can remember, 2 during my tenure, you will see that of Emeritus Professor Sogolo and the distinguished Professor Ubadamu. And then you can see some learning moment in our understanding of the multidimensional nature of conceptualizing and contextualizing the multidimensional nature of migration, whether in its local or global. Again, I thank you. I thank the director for fishing you out. And I thank you for being our in-laws. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you
very much.
Just to explain the fish, that we certainly, the Brits expatriates in Lagos, describe a newcomer, a new foreigner coming in as fresh fish, which fitted quite well with the images I used. But thank you for your comment.
Yeah. So I'll call on Professor Abela Ubadamu to make his comments.
Thank you very much, Trevor, for presentation. I find this often amusing. You know, I find it often amusing when you talk about your personal life experiences and some of the things that you have to do in order to reinvent yourself. And your presentation actually covers 2 aspects: the personal life story of an individual going through transformation, and then that of a person who is expatriate migrant in another society. And by being expatriate migrant in another society, you have gone native by marrying one of them. You know, so Egat, he's now marrying one of them, and you have all these children probably that are also them, So your children tend to have a sort of a dual identities. They could be British, and they could also be Nigerian or African. And I think that reflection, that part of reflection, is very, very critical to our understanding of ourselves. And I sympathize and synergize with your concept of reinvention, because I reinvented myself at 41. When I was 41 years old, I realized that I wasn't really happy doing what I was doing, and I don't see me doing that for the rest of my career. So I reinvented myself, pulled out of wherever I was, and charted out a new direction for myself. And here I am, very, very happy, very cool. So I appreciate your giving us this insight about reinventing ourselves. But reinvention, such reinvention does not necessarily need to be technological. Yes, you are using typewriters before, but now you are using computers, okay? There was no internet before, but now there was internet. So you have to flow with the tide to understand what was going on. Well, it could be something like acquiring new skills, going to the gym, becoming a footballer or playing table tennis or something. Something that says, hey, I'm tired of being what I am. Let me be something else. Let me be different, so that you can have a new lease in your life. So I think that's very critical reflection for all of us. You also mentioned that expatriates tend to flock together, which is okay. I was a student at Chelsea College in London, and I realized that when we go to the common room, all the Africans tend to aggregate to one place. All Africans, even if we don't know each other, we tend to, like a herd, this herd mentality, we sort of tend to shift to one place. The Britons tend to shift to another place. So anybody coming into the common room at Chelsea College at that time would see two clusters, the dark ones on this side and the light ones on the other side. I never considered it exclusiveness, hard mentality, or racism or anything. Just being comfortable with somebody that you know, being able to communicate with somebody that you can communicate with on the same kind of plane.
Security.
Yeah. So I understand that idea of expatriates flocking together. So it's cruel. It's cool. But some people may take an umbrage at that and say, look at them. They don't want to intermingle. Well, you prove them wrong by marrying one of them. So you are really a real intermingler. You are really, you have intermingled. So nobody can accuse you of not intermingling. Finally, how does your mind adjust to all these sudden switches? Oh, let me be very frank. The efficiency of London, everything works. Electricity, good roads, good water, security, except for probably one or two people who just simply snatch your phone or something like that. And the chaos that is Lagos. And the massive structure of Istanbul. I was in Istanbul before. The fourth largest city in the world, and the only city that straddles 3 continents. Is it 3 or yeah, it's in Asia, it is in Europe, it's in Europe, and then when you get into this boat, you leave Europe, and then you go to Asia, and then you come back. So how do you suddenly shift gears and kept your sanity? I mean, it will have driven me butts. You have to keep shifting from one place to another, different customs, different do's and don'ts. You have to be very careful about what to say, where to do, what to wear, and how do you shift gears? And finally, for you, Director, I think this is very, very important. Trevor has opened a door that we have never seen before. And that door was, let's not just focus on boring academics, with all these professors and their professing and things like that, just simply talking about theory, about, let's talk about real life migrants.
Yes.
Let's be ethnographic. Let's get real human beings who will tell us what it is. Not somebody who just simply go there, cut and paste, and come and share slides with us and tell us things that are not true. I've been fighting about this. So people like Trevor and other people who can come and share their experiences of the kind of life that they lead as migrants, moving from one place to another, adjusting and marrying beautiful ladies in the places that they discover. So I think we should start to pitch out more big fishes in small waters like Trevor, so that we can understand and appreciate their life experiences, not just, we're talking about migration, not talking about the theoretical background, conceptual background, and all that boring stuff.
Which I'm going to answer about my mindset. But first of all, I want to just pick up on this, the word that Professor Adamu used with technological change. And I think there's a good example of this, that I'm going to give you a continuum of something called writing a letter. That my mother, my late mother, was a secretary during the Second World War. And to type a letter, she would put a piece of paper in a manual typewriter and bash away at the keys, and God help her if she made a mistake. So they didn't make mistakes. At a manual typewriter. Then at some time where electric typewriters came along. And then came chunky word processors with huge pieces of machinery and rather strange shaped floppy disks. And then came laptop, easier to use. And today we have templates that we pick up and just change the date and change yours truly to yours sincerely to yours faithfully. And now we have voice to screen. Who needs to move your fingers? You just say, "Dear sir, further to your letter of X," and it comes up on the screen and reads itself back to you. Can you imagine my mother sitting at her manual typewriting in the War Office in 1944, imagining what we can do today? Completely impossible. This is why I'm so, and I talk to I have grown-up daughters and I have grandchildren. I talk to them about, you've got to keep reskilling. You've got to keep learning new things, because my mother would be unemployable today with her manual typewriter, okay, and some kind of rubber to get rid of marks on the paper. Unemployable. Now, the question that Professor Adamu asked was, how does my mind adjust to these changes? Well, sometimes it doesn't. But I do have a head start in that starting in 1983, I became a traveler. And I was traveling all the time to, as I said before, 90 countries, including 40 in Africa. So I had already experienced from an aeroplane, from a hotel room, different ways of doing things, looking at people living in different ways, from, the Korean way of doing things in Seoul, South Korea, to being greeted with a kiss by the governor's children of a state in Argentina who I'd never met before. And my goodness, I wouldn't want my children greeting a stranger with a kiss. So differences like that I'd already experienced, but I get so frustrated in both Nigeria and Turkey with bureaucracy, which is just, and this is one of the dysfunctions of bureaucracy, it is immovable, and it is not there to help. But what I've learned is just, well, two things. One is not get upset, because it doesn't help. And the second is throw money at the problem. If there's a lawyer who can help you with your immigration, pay the lawyer, for God's sake. Why am I stressing myself, banging on doors myself down at the immigration office? So I had a head start. I already knew a lot of different cultures, but it's never will be complete adjustment of one's mind. Thank you for your.
Thank you. So I'll call on Dr. Mazu to make his point.
Good morning, sirs, and the director, good morning, and thank you for the opportunity. And unfortunately, I want to say that the question I had wanted to ask, that the presenter tackled it, that's part of the last thing he said. But at any rate, I want to thank you, Trevor, for the presentation. I agree with the director when she said that your presentation sounded like poetry. I agree with her totally on that. And this is because of the manner you called our attention to the fact that traveling and migration open us up to new perspectives, new ways of seeing the world, of appreciating it. And then new opportunities, it gives us new opportunities for self-reinvention and rediscovery. Now, it is unfortunate that the nation states, we now have boundaries. Since the emergence of nation states, we have been limited. Our capacity to travel, to migrate have been limited greatly. There are laws. There are also borders that pose as restriction to all of us. But there are also individuals, powerful individuals, who also think that migration and traveling is a privilege that should be reserved for few people, So, and they make all effort to ensure that people do not move, people do not travel, despite all the advantages that this pose to them. Now, my question would have been, what do you say about the stifling effect of nation states on traveling and migration? Or if you allow me to put it in a different way, I wanted to ask whether there are places you have loved to visit, to travel to that you were not allowed to visit. You feel sorry, you want to visit this place, but you've not been able to visit it due to the influence of the nation states on traveling and movement of persons from one place to another. Thank you.
I personally have never had that experience. My wife is Nigerian. My wife has a Nigerian passport. I have a British passport. I have the benefit of a British passport, which post-Brexit isn't quite as valuable as it used to be, but it still is not. I can't think of a single country that bans Brits wholeheartedly. Nigeria, as you all, I'm sure, know, it's not that easy to get visas. So constantly she has battles with visas. Constantly, my friends of mine. I have a friend who was refused a visit to South Africa to attend his brother's funeral, for example, and this is pre-pandemic. So I'm aware of it being a problem, and it's not one I have faced myself, probably because I have a British passport.
Thank you very much for that response. The hand is up, so can we hear from you, Professor
Yes,
Neto?
good afternoon. A very simple question. Thank you very much for your lecture. It was quite practical. I just wanted to ask you if you think that somebody who is not as economically endowed as you are will probably have had the same trajectory as you did. In other words, do you consider economic limitation a hindrance to migration, the way you have experienced it? Thank you.
I had a little difficulty hearing. I think you're referring to me as economically endowed.
Yes.
That was the expression you used?
Well,
Yes.
I don't know if that is acceptable to you, but that's my own impression.
Right. Okay. On both of my migrations, yes, I was financially able to do so. Certainly, the second migration to Turkey, the first migration, it wasn't that easy financially, and yeah, I went through a divorce, and divorce is always expensive, particularly for the man in the UK. But yeah, I mean, but you do hear of people moving with 10 quid in their pocket. You hear the stories of people moving to the UK of old. I'm sure there's a story of a Nigerian or a Ghanaian or someone with a pound in his pocket, and now he's a billionaire. But so it's not impossible to do it, nor is it easy. But it's not impossible. But these days it can be expensive. And of course, yes, I had the resources to rent an office, rent an apartment, buy a house in Turkey, buy a house in Nigeria. So it helps. Money does ease one's passage.
All right, thank you. I can see something in the chat. Maybe I can read it out for you. I don't know why he didn't want to speak. From Samuel again. Pardon?
I can't see anything on the chat for some reason.
So, but that's why I'm reading it out. Good afternoon, Mr. Ward. As an immigrant making huge impacts in the hospitality industry in Nigeria, what has been your experience so far? What are the challenges you have encountered that impact negatively in the hospitality industry development in Nigeria? So it's going to look at your own profession now as what.
Sorry, Gloria, I heard challenges. What challenges did I face? But there was more than that.
Yes, what are the, okay, let me take it again. What are the challenges you have encountered in the hospitality industry that impact negatively in this industry development in Nigeria? I don't know whether you got me right. Did you encounter challenges? Pardon?
What did you say? Challenges to hospitality development?
Yes, that's what have been the challenges you experience in that industry in Nigeria. Whether there are challenges in hospitality industry in Nigeria. Did you experience any? What is the impact on that industry development in Nigeria?
Okay, well, that's going to be another hour and a separate PowerPoint presentation. Are you okay for that now? It's a huge subject. The challenges in the Nigerian economy are known to all of you. I don't need to go through them. The hospitality industry is part of the Nigerian economy, therefore faces all those challenges. It's the same as anything. Bureaucracy, money or lack of money, lack of expertise, yes, the C word, corruption, et cetera, that faces anybody. But this really is a completely different topic. And there are any of the challenges to hospitality development in Nigeria unique? No, I don't think they are. I think that most countries in the world will present these challenges in one form or the other. So I'm dodging the question because it's such a huge answer to give.
Yes, I understand. Maybe it will be taking you out of your focus. Well, no problem. Thank you so much for your response so far. I don't know, do you have a word for us in this forum? You have seen a little bit about this center. I know you have gone online because you told me you went online to search. And so do you have any word for us here before I make my closing remarks? Just one more last word from you, Mr. Trevor.
Well, I don't want to cause any offense, but maybe Professor Adamu has already caused that offense. But I do echo what he says, that you know, it's not all about academia and Oxford references and this. It's you need to have a mix of that and which of course brings the data and the research on which to base presumptions or assumptions and theories, but real life, not just me. I mean, I'm one very, very narrow view of migration. But that someone was talking about, you know, the financial talk. It would be interesting to hear about somebody who did face incredible financial challenges in order to migrate and what their motivations were. So getting the real life into academia, it must be a very good thing. That's my comment.
Okay. Thank you so much. I want to say, let me respond a little to this bringing people to express their migration experiences. You know, it's not easy. If you must know, I think I've been with you now for about 3-4 months, trying to get you here, and you'll be very busy. And then we started around June or May, and now we were able to come here in September, at the end of September. So it's not been easy. So I really want to use this medium to appeal to everyone here. If you know somebody who can share experiences with us, why not? We are always open. It's because we're in an academic environment, and the academic people are always willing to share data. But people, on the other hand, who are not in academic environment, they are not as bold as you are now. And even now, we were here for about 4 months before we were able to get the big fish out of water. I can say Mr. Trevor is a big fish we brought out of water now to do something new. And it took us almost 4 months to have him here. So it's not easy at all. But we keep him out of the water.
Were you the one who brought him out of the water?
No, somebody led me. Somebody, I must say, I want to thank a colleague here. She's one of us here, Dr. Abisoye in Faculty of Law, who helped to fished out Mr. Trevor. So you can see the networking. So I'm always ready and open to welcoming people to this platform. I yearn for it. And so I'm really open to it, and I would want to get messages. And I also want Mr. Trevor to help us look for one of his friends somewhere in the business, not necessarily in his hospitality industry, but in any other industry that will be willing to share with us. We give them the time they want to come. As much as possible, we plan with them. We will not be in a hurry, but we will be happy to have them on this platform. So I am very, very conscious of that. On this note, I want to thank you all for making this session very active, participatory, and I want to thank Mr. Trevor for his time and to assure him that we keep to time. If you look at your watch, it is almost 1:30, and we are going to call it a day, except there are further questions. If not, on this note, I want to say thank you and bye-bye, and we are closing before 1:30. So you can be sure we keep to time. Thank you so much, and bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.